NASCAR drivers are more versatile. They're better drivers than everybody else. It's not a debate. And oh, by the way, I'm a NASCAR driver.
All right, we're live. Hello, welcome to the Money Lap. I'm Parker Kligerman, joined by Landon Cassill. This is our podcast about all things motorsports. You could even say it's like the most versatile podcast in all of motorsports. What is a Money Lap? It is the perfect lap, the qualifying lap that gets the pole. It's the lap that pays, Landon. And with that, we also have
It's not the perfect lap. No,
I thought it was the perfect lap.
It is. It's not the perfect lap, but it's a lap that pays.
That's right. I screwed it up. That's even better. I love that.
This is the opening intro to Money Lap. We've been doing this. We've been practicing for 2 months.
We literally have.
I don't think we've spent that much time talking about what a Money Lap is. You know what? Welcome to the Money Lap. Why did we start this Money Lap, Parker? Well, we started with a newsletter, really. And we have a newsletter called The Money Lap. It goes out every week, every Tuesday and Thursday, and it covers everything about motorsports because we love motorsports. And you know what? Turns out there's a reason we love motorsports because we've been in motorsports for a long time. Or maybe that's vice versa. Maybe we're in motorsports because we love motorsports. Anyways, Parker and Landon, we're both professional race car drivers and lovers of all motorsports. So yes, we are versatile. We try to talk about all kinds of motorsports. We can talk about versatility later, though, because that is an interesting topic for this week. But the Money Lap, check out the Money Lap newsletter Tuesdays and Thursdays. We've got a couple thousand subscribers, great open rates there. In 5 minutes, you can get everything you need to know about motorsports and what's happening in motorsports so that when you're out at the bar and you're trying to, like, pick up chicks, you can snuggle up and be like, hey, what's up? Did you know what Toto Wolff said about making the racing more exciting this weekend?
Bam.
Just something to help you guys out.
That's an intro. You know what? You're hired. You're the new intro guy. I like it.
Let's do it.
Well, you led perfectly into it. Toto Wolff in the Money Lap today says the racing needs to be more exciting instead of messing with the formats. And for those who don't know, Formula One has been messing with these ideas of sprint races and sprint formats within their weekends, which historically a weekend in Formula One was 2 free practices, qualifying, and a 3rd free practice, and then you had a Grand Prix. And for all the people that are going to be like, Grand Prix, I'm sorry, if you want that on this show, I'm not saying it. You can say Grand Prix, Landon.
So sprint format does set the lineup? Is it part of setting the lineup?
It used to be. So the other sprint format last year, in the year that they've done this, had that where it set the lineup for the actual Grand Prix. This format was not the case. So you had multiple qualifying sessions. So you had basically a free practice, a qualifying session, then a sprint race, and then a qualifying session, and you had the race, right? And so it was kind of packed and all this. But at the end of the day, personally, I don't care. Like, to me, it cheapens the brand. It cheapens the Grand Prix because Formula One is literally the idea of the grand prize, the single event that's going to get you that one big prize, and that is the Grand Prix. To be adding sprint races and such, to me, is not where F1 needs to be looking. And so I agree with Toto Wolff here because if your races were more entertaining, your main product, they already have everyone's attention off the racetrack with their reality show and all that stuff and all the politics and everything behind it. There's no reason to have sprint races. I have not once yet watched one and thought, my God, I'm so glad I'm watching this. This is awesome. I'm so excited that they're racing. Like, I would rather watch qualifying every time. And so I just don't understand why this is here. And so I absolutely agree with Toto. Make the cars race better, and you won't have to have sprint race formats.
We can we don't have to spend too much time on this topic, and I know we're coming right on the bat with it, but when you're going through all this, something came to mind for me. And first of all, in NASCAR, we've kind of gone through this, right? Because we've explored heat races at short tracks. Obviously, the dirt track uses heat races. So NASCAR has kind of toyed with this idea of heat race format. And I think the first question is, why do racing series try this? Why do they, want to have like feeder races into the main race? And I think that a lot of times it comes from, you might be able to answer this, Parker, TV demand. Like the broadcast partners are asking for more racing content, right? So that you have the race weekend, and I do think that sometimes maybe all the practice content and the qualifying content is, while it's good, I think the TV partners a lot of times like to broadcast more racing content. They feel like that will attract more eyeballs if there's a race happening that they can broadcast in place of a qualifying session. So I do feel like a lot of times that ask comes from the TV side. And so the racing series then tries to accommodate that by saying, okay, well, here's how we'll adjust the on-track schedule over the course of a weekend, and we'll add in this heat race format. And I think the reason that it fails at this professional level of F1 or NASCAR is when you already have a set field of cars, right? In Formula One, there's 20 cars in a field, and that's decided, before the season even starts. In NASCAR, you have 36 charters. Those are the cars that are racing. They're guaranteed to race no matter what. It's kind of pointless to have a heat race when you have a set field of cars. Where heat racing and qualifying races are not just useful, but actually really valuable and really entertaining, is when you have more cars entered in the race than are actually able to race in the race.
Yes!
So on a huge scale, right? Like the greatest one in all of motorsports really is the Chili Bowl, right? Because you have a 24-car starting field in the Chili Bowl. I'm sorry if I'm screwing this up, dirt racers. But you have a 20-some car starting field in the Chili Bowl. But there's 400 cars that sign up to run the Chili Bowl. It takes them an entire week to get through heat races, qualifying races. They call them mains, but they're essentially qualifying race. They're A-main features that get you into the main event, right? And then even on the day of the main event, they have more qualifying races that ladder you up into the main event. So, that's an example of, motor racing as a tournament, essentially, which is cool. I mean, even in iRacing and in eRacer, we put on the Firecracker 400 and we structure it like a tournament. We have the ability to take 500 competitors down to 43 by having heat races and qualifying races. So it's great when, and then I'll make one more example. It also works even at a smaller scale, right? Take the Daytona 500. When there are, we haven't seen it in a long time, but every year there's, 45, 46, 47 cars trying to attempt a 40-car starting field in the Daytona 500. And there's been years where there were 60 cars trying to attempt the Daytona 500. That's what the duels are for, the Thursday night before the Daytona 500. You have two races back-to-back. They used to call them the twins. Now they're called the duels. And with 60 cars, you have two fields of 30 cars in each of them. And, long story short, the top 22 cars or 20 cars out of each race are going to advance to the Daytona 500. That is a valuable heat race, right? That is compelling, great story, great TV. But when you don't have that risk of a guaranteed starting field, heat racing just never does seem to work.
It doesn't.
Cool. Next topic.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's perfect. Toto, you're right. F1, scrap them. Focus on the racing product itself. Speaking of racing product, or maybe prodigies, I don't know. Not quite. But the Truex family had the sweep at Dover, but we just got to give a shout-out to our boy, Ryan Truex, one of my best friends besides yourself in the motorsports world. And this was a big win for the good guys because of how long he has tried to get a win at this level. And all the way back to 2012, if you've ever hung out with him and had a couple drinks, he will remind you he almost won the Dover race in 2012 in Xfinity. Rightfully so. He had locked up. Taken away, and it took 10 years later to get back there, but that's pretty awesome. I thought it was really cool to see him win. So,
I saw a couple good tweets. First of all, I had forgotten about that loss of Ryan's, and I saw a Twitter user posted that last couple laps of that race, and the tagline was the best I saw, which was mid-2010s Xfinity lap cars were out of pocket, and it was basically the worst lap car blocking the leader with 5 laps to go, and unfortunately it was our boy Ryan was the leader of the race. It held him up. He got overtaken by Joey Logano, I think it was. I texted Ryan after the race, and I said, dang, we're no longer tied on the all-time Xfinity win list. Happy for you. He said, I'm sorry, but thank you. That was a fun time. And then I said, I texted him, I said, they might have said it was your home track 500 times on the TV.
That, plus I was leaving
the track. And then,
of
course, his brother.
Yeah, well, I almost ruined that moment, by the way, with his brother. So
What'd you do?
was leaving the track. Well, we wrecked, and I was already out of the race, but I hung out and watched a lot of it. And then I turned to Shannon, my girlfriend, I'm like, Ryan's going to win this race. Like, unless something stupid here happens, he's going to win. So we walked very slowly out of the racetrack, and to exit Dover, you have to go over like a bridge that's over in turn 2, and the garages for Xfinity are all the way over in 3 and 4. So it's quite a hike. And once we get to like halfway to the bridge, or even right to the bridge, I'm like, it's 3 to go. He's won this race. This is over. And so we watch it actually happen, and I'm like, I turned around and I said, like, I think I have to go to victory lane. Like, I got to go say something. Like, Ryan and we have been through this journey, in this journey together for a long time, and have had some great times and some really, helped each other some really tough times. And so I ran out there onto pit lane, and I sort of positioned where he's going to pull into victory lane. And I'm about to like run up and say like, congrats through the window. And then I realize his brother, Martin Truex Jr., is running down the pit road like a crazy person with his cell phone out, being like, ah! And I was like, oh, whoa. I shouldn't get in the way of this. So I backed away, and then I just gave him a thumbs up through the window. Yeah, and I was like, I got to get out of this Fox shot. And so I was like, I backed away, and then when he was done with his brother, he sort of turned in. And I thought he saw me, so then I texted him afterwards. We had texted anyway, and I was like, hey, by the way, did you see me? He goes, yes. And I was like, that is the most Ryan Truex answer possible. So,
one last note on Ryan Truex. When guys like him get their first win or they see success, one of the things that we always compliment about them is like, hey, here's a guy that has had to battle uncertainty, right? Because that's kind of the journey of drivers like us, drivers like Ryan, Jeb Burton, who won at Talladega last week. One of the endearing qualities of that career is that you deal with a lot of uncertainty, and even in its own in its small samples. I mean, I'm a driver that has had a lot of uncertainty in my career, but I've had periods of certainty, right? I've had multi-year contracts, or I've had full-time rides that lasted, the entire year, or for 2 years or 3 years. Ryan is a driver that I think has never had a period of certainty more than 6 months in his career.
That is a good point.
I don't think he's never, like, you want to talk about like drivers that top the list of having. I'm sorry, Ryan, if this is a backhanded compliment or not. I feel like Ryan is a driver that has not had any level of certainty. I mean, I guess he ran a truck full time at one point for Nice, maybe.
Well, he also did 1 year at.
I don't
Colleague.
think
He had the 1 year at Colleague, but that's in 1 year. Yeah.
So but most of his deals have just been either race to race or, packages of races, and so, and even this deal with Gibbs, I mean, it's not an entire season. He's got handfuls of races here and there. So good for him. Keep plugging away. I don't know when he's in the car again, but I know that it could unlock 2 or 3 more wins for him.
And the last thing I'll say is he didn't just win that race. He absolutely dominated. When he went by me at the beginning of the race, they were telling me I was running the same lap times as the top 5 cars at that point, 24 ones. And they go, except the 19 who just went by, and I could see it. Yeah, they're like, he's at 23 sixes. It was another zip code. So good for him. Dover, we'll just rip through some other quick topics from the Money Lap newsletter. Scott McLaughlin wins at Barber. That was a cool race. Natural different strategies. He also will come up later in this episode. Ross Chastain wrecked another car. Brendan Poole, into Kyle Larson, making him public enemy number 1 once again. He did say after the race, "I'm sorry, and that I get to race my heroes." Something new and different.
Sorry, and I get to race my heroes? Okay.
Yeah, he said that.
I love Ross. Ross and I are friends. So I don't know what to say. Ross is just really intense. He wants to win. I respect his driving style a lot because I think that he's someone that has a vision and a goal, and he is able to dig really deep mentally to go for that goal. And I think a lot of things happen along the way, like these mistakes, causing wrecks and things like that. And at the end of the day, I think it's more important for him to not let that get to his head, and screw him up. And people, this is what I mean. The statement I'm making is probably the opposite of what the rest of the world is saying, because everybody wants to say, "Oh, Ross needs to level his head," and Denny Hamlin's going to be, if he even cared enough, he would say, "Landon, what are you talking about? Ross needs to race smarter." And it's just like, I've talked to Ross after these incidents, and I'm like, just keep digging, man. Just keep digging.
Yep.
Because as long, but here's the catch, right? There is a catch to it. And I am a very nuanced debater, so I'm open-minded to all this stuff, and we're going to get into that later, too.
You're
so
wait. No, you're versatile.
I'm versatile. So here's my nuanced debate on this whole Ross thing. My initial position with Ross is just don't let it distract you. Don't listen to what other people have to say, because they're not looking out for you, right? Denny Hamlin is not looking out for you. Daniel Trotta is not looking out for you. Like, whoever it is that's on Twitter, they're not looking out for you, right? Is you and your team, and your goal is to win races and win a championship. And you just have to keep down your path and keep doing what you're doing. And if you feel like you need to stop wrecking people, then deal with that in your own way, but don't let these other people distract you. Now, the catch here is he's leading points, right? So he's accomplishing his goal. He's been winning races, right? Or running really, really well. So this, whatever he's doing, right? Wrecking cars on accident. Oh, I feel bad. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, but it continuing to happen. That's all fine and dandy while you're the points leader and while you're winning races, right? If he's still doing that when he's running 15th or when they're out of the playoffs, that's when it really backfires on you. And that's when you have to adjust. But as long as he's still accomplishing his goals, he needs to continue down that path.
So I want to disagree with you, but I can't.
Now, I don't endorse wrecking.
Yeah.
What?
Well, I don't
endorse wrecking. I'm not using that as a way to endorse wrecking Brendan Poole. Like, that's wrong no matter what, right? It's just like, this is what he's trying to accomplish by being a NASCAR champion is so freaking hard. And it is going to take so much of his focus, right? That, like, he can't, whatever aggression level he needs to drive lap after lap after lap to be able to run in the top 5 and to be able to compete with these guys. If he can't change that just because he wrecked Brendan Poole on accident, right? He can't change that just because he nerfed Denny Hamlin and didn't really mean to, but he just stepped over the line, right? Like, as long as he's continuing to get his results, he's just got to keep going, man. Like, I don't know. I think if I'm Ross Chastain and I get 2 wins a year and I make it through the playoffs and I make the Final Four again, I guess I'll just say I'll apologize after every race if I have to. I don't know other. Show me another way. I guess I don't.
He barely missed the championship last year. He was just behind Joe Logano at the end of that race. So I mean, in essence, it was it led to being, as you put it, a championship 4 contender and almost a champion. So why would you change it? It's all been instructed to you that every bit of your performance and everything you've done has led you to your best performance of all time and finishing result ever. So I get that, right? And I get that what you're saying, which is this will take everything he has and more, because he's trying to win at the highest level of American motorsports and its biggest prize, and he is going up against gargantuan organizations with entrenched speed and ability and wherewithal that, as Trackhouse, a younger team that took over for Ganassi, which had not competed for championships in years prior, They're trying to do something to take that organization to that point. So I agree with you, and I want to disagree with you on maybe the way he goes about it, right? But personally, as a spectator and as a guy who has been on the TV side, I love it. I just think I think there should be more people who just don't give a shit about anyone else. Well, and not just that, like, you shouldn't have to care about your competitors. They are the ones who want to beat you. Why do you want anyone to get out of that car and be like, man, I'm really sorry for Brendan Poole? Why should he care for Brendan Poole? Why at all? Like, I know I like Brendan. Good dude. We talk all the time.
I do
Consider
think
him a friend. But hold on. And my point being, I know he cares about them, but my point being, this is a dog-eat-dog world. You need to worry about you, and I think this mentality is respected years past the time that you're doing it. But for a lot of people need to understand that right now, the way he is approaching this is what's enabling him to have success. It also, he has the success, so he can fall back on that. That it's not an issue holding them back. And lastly, he should only care about him, and whatever way he thinks is correct is the way he should do it. And that's just, I don't agree with anything anyone else out there saying that he has to change or anything. No, whatever he thinks and his owners and his sponsors think is correct, then he can do what the hell he wants. But whatever they think is correct.
And as long as he's getting the results that they're looking for, and it seems like he does have the support. Justin Marks has come out publicly, I think last year, and just said, we told Ross to keep doing his thing, keep being himself. So, I mean, this conversation, this dialogue, I didn't plan this, but inspired me so much, I just sent Ross a text and said, don't ever change.
He'll know why soon. Last news topic. I thought, there's a global news section in Money Lap, which I always find fascinating, where we dump some of the most interesting links from around the motorsport world. One that popped out to me was Supercars, which used to be known as V8 Supercars in Australia, which is like their form of NASCAR that's on road courses. They just went to a brand new car this season called the Gen 3 car, which is their version of our next gen car in NASCAR, right? It's this car that's far more spec, and that has hopefully made the racing closer, and it's less reliant on downforce and all this stuff, and it's been very cool. They have a Camaro and a Mustang going versus each other, but one of the things they also did that NASCAR has not done, and they were one of the few racing series I've seen do this really in the world, they have basically decided there's two engines available for the series, which is the Chevy and the Ford, that are essentially crate motors. They are built by the same engine builder. They are then, numbered, and the series randomly assigns those engines to either, the Ford ones to the Ford teams and the Chevy ones to the Chevy teams. And the whole effort is to, one, reduce cost, obviously, which they've done massively. It's a gargantuan lowering of cost. They didn't lose a lot of performance. And lastly, to have parity. And they've had it. Like in the I think it's the second or third race of the year, that the field in the top 20 was separated by basically 3.5 tenths from first to 20th on a road course. Like, that is a tight damn field. The one thing that was interesting that was in the Money Lap was the Ford teams are complaining that some of the mapping in their engine isn't correct, so they actually got an adjustment, but it didn't help enough. And so it's just a funny thing when you talk about like super close racing and the parity that creates when the cars are so similar, the engines are the same, is that the Ford teams believe maybe they're losing a little bit on the engine mapping and that it can make the difference. And it's like, that's when you get down to these tiny little things that make huge differences. So it'll be interesting to see how Supercars and the teams, everyone, react to that, because it's kind of the future of a lot of motorsport series to go this path. But it's just, I thought, a very interesting thing to see how small, tiny things can make such huge differences.
We kind of need to follow that a little bit more, and I myself, I want to know more about that, because we always talk about how in NASCAR the final boss is the engine builder, right? Like the final boss on the quest, the final boss on the quest of controlling costs or having parity in this sport is that engine builder. Because in our sport, we still have essentially open engines, right? We have independent engine builders. They're all subsidized by the manufacturer. The teams have to lease their motors from the engine builders. It's an absolutely astronomical cost. That's insane. especially for a motor that, we're paying. I was having this conversation with someone else this morning, and the conversation always leads to a place where I go, how much money can I spend on Jags.com to buy a crate engine that has the same amount of power as the engine in our Xfinity car? And I think for like $16,000, you can buy a crate engine that has like 700 horsepower. We spend...
It probably has a warranty too.
$50,000. Yeah, if it has a warranty. We have $50,000 per race in Xfinity, $150,000 per race in Cup to rent an engine. You don't even own it. You don't even get the motor. You just got to rent it for one race for that much money. So, obviously that I would imagine the supercars really, really reduce their costs with this crate engine. It's interesting how they're making it a handout type thing too. So I'm curious. I guess to go back to my original point, I'm curious on how Supercross the series was able to sort of beat that final boss. Like, how were they able to go to those engine builders and be like, we're essentially putting you out of business, right? We're gonna contract one single engine builder to build all the motors. They got the manufacturers on board with it, obviously, because there's manufacturer support in that series. How did they accomplish that politically?
It's a good question. I think we'll just have to follow it and see how it aligns. I know I did watch a YouTube video that was like all about the motors and how they were building them, and it was actually really fascinating. And it was hosted by Mark Larkham, who's like they call him Larko. He's a former driver who's a commentator over there. Does a great job, like their tech guy. But it was really interesting, and I don't know the background, especially like as you put it, the political side of how they got that done, where they got the other engine builders maybe to be like, yeah, we're taking this business from you, or even like where that all went down. But I think a lot of it was just financial. They have had some uncertainties in their TV contracts and that sort of thing that they've had to work through financially. So I think a lot of it's probably financial, but we'll follow it. Speaking of engines, dude, we do have to talk about one thing that came out today on Twitter, which is the team principal for Aston Martin Formula One, Mike Crack, was on Bloomberg TV, where he said that they likely will not be... What?
You're what?
Did you... I know.
Sorry.
I was waiting. I wanted someone to make a joke. I was like, I wonder if he'll catch this name and say something to me. All right. Anyway.
I'm sorry. Start that over. Mike Crack from Aston Martin F1.
Mike Crack said that we likely won't be racing.
Nobody's going to take us serious, Parker. This is why nobody's going to take us serious.
We're done. We won't be racing an internal combustion engine 20 years from now. The combustion engine will have its time for the next 10 years for sure, but ultimately it will fade out. This was his quote. I do not fully agree.
Do you agree?
No, I don't. And here's my reasoning. Formula One has been very forward-thinking in their additions of hybrid power, right? Many years ago, back in 2014, they added hybrids, and before that there's KERS and all this stuff, right? The electric side has proven to be sort of an enticer for manufacturers, but it really wasn't what they thought it would be, right? You really didn't get many manufacturers joining because of the hybrid technology. They eventually joined because Formula One got more popular, and now you have every manufacturer want to be a part of it. I don't care if it was naturally aspirated V8s or hybrid technology. It wouldn't matter. They'd all be there. And anyone who tells you different, they don't listen. The thing is, they also have been very forward-thinking in the idea of going towards e-fuels. And they've announced that by, I think, 2026, they'll be entirely, eco-friendly. The fuels will be e-fuels, which e-fuels are synthetic-created fuels that mimic gasoline, right? But they're created entirely synthetically, and one of the biggest issues with it in the last few years has been the cost to produce it is massively high. If it's if it's $1 per gallon, it's like 10x higher to produce an e-fuel gallon. So it's really tough. It's really complex, but they are going down this path. And I personally have been trying to get anyone who would listen on the NASCAR side to look at this before we ever went electric, because to me, this is the answer for internal combustion engine racing to be able to go into an electrified future without being electric. If electric was the predominant form of what people want to see in racing right now, Formula E would be absolutely massive. And is it popular? Yes. Is it doing well with manufacturers? Yes. But is it the single largest form of racing in the world right now? Absolutely not. And I just don't think it has that chance. So I get manufacturer relevance, but we also still race horses. And I've seen this mentioned many times, and I've always said this. They haven't been a viable form of transportation in over 120 years. We still race them. I think top-level motorsports and the internal combustion engine can be a place where, and motorsports in general can be a place to prove how long we can really go with the internal combustion engine. And I think manufacturers, I know by 2035 you have certain cities that are saying, we won't be allowing the sale of internal combustion engines and that sort of thing. I don't know if that really matters, because if you think about the NASCAR model, we don't sell carbureted V8s like we do have in the Xfinity Series, but manufacturers still care to be there, right? So what does it matter if a car is racing an internal combustion engine, but they don't sell them anymore? I just don't know if that is really the limiter when there's a billion people that watch F1 every year, right? So I don't agree with him, because I believe, because of e-fuels and proving how far it can go, and for the entertainment side of this sport, the internal combustion engine will go a lot longer than anyone thinks.
I have a kind of a different perspective on it that has I have a very macro, maybe holistic might be, or theological, I think could be. I'm sorry for using big words here. But I think theological is my...
We lost everyone.
It is my perspective. I have this theological perspective on this topic, and it involves agreeing with him. And I think that, first of all, I'll say there will always be internal combustion engine racing forever, right? And there will always be a place for that forever. Even if it's all the way down on the local level, or there will always be racing series with it because those engines are cool. And like you said, we still have horse racing. But I think from like a motorsport, like what is the point of motorsports? And even F1, like this would be my argument to agreeing with him that F1 someday will be all electric. And I'm not saying because, they decided one day, like, from here on out it's electric, or that's what the fans wanted or whatever. I think the reason it will be all electric is because I think that electric motors and electric race cars are going to surpass internal combustion engine race cars as a higher performance race car, right? They're going to be faster someday. They're going to, they are going to last longer eventually. They're going to perform better. And the whole point of motor racing to exist, F1 especially, right? Because essentially the point of F1 is like, let's build the fastest race car in the world. They're the fastest race cars in the world, aren't they? I don't know. Yep. Maybe they're not.
Yeah.
Are they?
No,
not?
they are.
Like
they are.
It is the pinnacle of speed on a road racetrack, right? Downforce and speed, and they go 200 miles an hour, and they can stop on a dime. Eventually, for F1 to still be F1, if you can build an electric car that goes faster, that can go faster than an F1 car, then F1 has to be that car, in my opinion. Like just for the sake of the religion of it, right? So I think that's where he's right, is someday that those electric powered cars, the batteries are going to get lighter, and the CG is going to get lower, and then the power is going to go up, and the longevity is going to go up. Eventually, it's going to blow an F1 car out of the water, and the manufacturers are going to find a way to be like, we want to race these. And I think that transition is going to be the interesting thing. Like, how does that happen, right? That's what we don't know. Like, we're so used to being able to say that it's binary, right? Like, oh, it's going to be in 2029, all the cars are going to switch over to electric. But who knows how it happens, right? Because the sports go through so many different transitions, where it's like right now, all global motorsports is on this trend of like everything needs to be spec, right? So we're all going to spec cars, we're all going to crate engines, we're all going to this. Everybody runs the same thing, this and that. But who's to say that in the next decade it doesn't go completely the other direction, where motor racing goes back on a run what you brung trend, right? And what if F1 goes back to this format that it used to have, decades ago, where it's like there are no rules. You just bring what you want, and you're gonna have all kinds of engines, and then an electric car comes into the field, and it's the only electric car, and Tesla is fielding an F1 team, and they win the Formula One World Championship with an electric car, beating out all these, V6s and supercharged and whatever. Who knows? That's like
that's a really cool future, Landon.
Type thinking.
I want to sign up for that.
I don't know. I know I'm like really kind of getting out there, and it's maybe would tease as like a big brain thought process, but it's like the core of that theory to me is just the fact that the point of motor racing, especially F1, is what is the fastest possible race car that can exist, right? Well, that car is F1. And so if an electric car can beat that, I think that F1 eventually will be electric someday.
Shit, you sold me. That was cool. I want to see that. I want to see the hybrids and the electric cars go head-to-head and Tesla to be in Formula One. That would be awesome. Now, the realist in me says this is not going to happen, and I really think all motorsports in this time period you're talking about is going to be in a real inflection point of deciding whether you go towards manufacturer relevance or you go towards entertainment and show, right? Because, which is that already happened.
I want it to happen in NASCAR. Here's my 60-second pitch.
That would be cool.
I got a 60-second pitch for NASCAR real quick.
Go.
I got a pitch for NASCAR. Okay. Chassis and bodies are all on the same platform, right? Now, bodies, obviously, the manufacturers have to have identity, so there's aero balancing and everything that has to be the same. But let's just say chassis and bodies, same platform that we're using now. The engine and drivetrain is completely run what you brung, okay? But here, there has to be parameters, right? So the engine and drivetrain is determined by the manufacturer that you're with, and the manufacturer is responsible for developing the engine and drivetrain. So let's just say right now we have Ford, Chevy, and Toyota. Let's say we're able to bring in another manufacturer. Let's say we can bring in VW, right? Well, now we have 4 manufacturers, and they can build whatever they want. So VW, they could run a diesel car if they wanted to, right? And Tesla could build an electric car. So I think that you'd have to have some parameters there where the manufacturers are required to support up to a certain, either a minimum, a maximum, or just a number of cars. So if you have 5 manufacturers, they all have to support 6 cars. There's a 30-car field, or 7 cars, there's a 35-car field. And the manufacturer supplies the power plant and the drivetrain, right? So now you also make it to where like that's the manufacturer's contribution. So maybe the teams don't have to pay for it. So that gets rid of the whole like engine builder and the whole scam system of, leasing engines and how that BS business model works in our sport right now. You basically just have the manufacturers providing their support via the power plant to these teams. And it's just total run what you brung. They can build whatever they want. If Ford is working on hybrid, supercharged, or V6s, I don't know. I'm not much of an engine guy, but and if Mopar is in the sport or Dodge is in the sport, and they still want to have a big block and a whatever big old school engine package that they want to build that they're putting in their Hellcats, more power to them. As long as they can fit it in the car, in the NASCAR chassis, in the platform, they can run it. If Tesla wants to build an electric car, by God, let's do it.
So I fully support this because I am a huge supporter of when there's innovation in motorsports, especially at the top level, give it, if you're going to innovate, if you're going to try and say we're doing stuff that's really cool and highly technologically advanced, make it that the fans can see it, hear it, or feel it. So if it means the powertrains are different, then by all means, they will know that. When a car goes by and it's electric, you'll sense it. When it goes by and it's a V8, you'll know it. When it goes by and it's a V6 twin turbo and it shifts and pops and a blow-off valve goes off when you lift off the gas, they'll know it. You can sense that, you can see that, you can hear it, and you can feel it. To me, that should be the basis of which you allow technological innovation.
if it goes by and it's your cousin Kyle who just got his signing bonus for signing up for the Marines, Hellcat, you'll know it. Drinking a Monster.
Awesome. Let's just quickly Dover. Just some things I saw there I thought were cool. James Small taking 2 tires to beat our buddy Ross Chastain there on 4. They had to make that call. The 19 was leading with that late race caution. You can't throw that race away by putting 4 tires on the 19 car. Keep the track position. Martin Truex drove his butt off to try and stay ahead of the 1 car and did it. Got the win in the sweep. I just thought that was a really cool, correct call by James Small, because I think we always talk about crew chiefs and the wrong call they make. That was one of those times where you got to give a shout out to saying, hey, you made the right call, as opposed to last year at New Hampshire, they had a late race decision and made the wrong call, lost that race, and the 19 didn't make the playoffs. So I thought that was a big moment for James Small.
Good job, James. Mate.
There you go. Mate. All right. We've been joking about it. We have been referencing it. What? What? You not gonna let me introduce this?
Well, we were we gonna talk? Okay. We're skipping Corey for a minute because we're gonna leave him after. Shout out our boy Corey.
We're gonna do it after.
Okay. We can talk about Corey later. Okay.
But we got to give the people what they want, because this is what they've come here for.
Okay.
Landon, this is a versatile podcast. Okay?
I just wanted to break up your intro.
Thank you. So, what I was going to say was, you went viral this weekend, and it was via a tweet that has 1 million views on Twitter. It's over 1,300 likes, 200 to 300 retweets, and like almost 400 replies. And the tweet, not the Twitter, I'm going to read to you here. NASCAR drivers are the most versatile professional racing drivers in the world. More surfaces, racing styles, track types than any series. F1 driver is a true specialist focused on singular style of racing, while a modern Cup Series driver must be a jack of all trades. Discuss. So, Landon, I'm going to let you have the floor here to explain yourself with the tweet that not only got covered by other racing media, but it was actually quote tweeted by an Indy 500 champion, the Indycar race winner of this past Sunday, many other Indycar drivers referencing it, and most of all motorsports Twitter making some form of veiled reference to the idea of the word versatile. Explain yourself.
If you would remember, another fun point about this tweet, because it does seem like the reaction to this tweet was a lot of there was a lot of IndyCar reaction. There was a lot of, I would say it was mostly IndyCar reaction. So I also got a lot of hate from them. A lot of disappointment. A lot of great nuanced discussion, though, which is really why I really feel like I'm pretty open-minded. So that's why I said discuss. I think if you read a lot of my replies, I was fairly nuanced in it all. It was an insensitive time that I sent the tweet because it was during the IndyCar race, and obviously I didn't mention IndyCar in the original tweet. It took till my second tweet that I gave a nod to IndyCar and the versatility that I see that in their demand and their schedule. It's really the reason I brought up NASCAR and F1 in the original tweet is because it was, to me, I wanted to use like 2 polarizing examples, right? So NASCAR drivers are the most versatile professional racing drivers in the world, more surfaces, racing styles, track types than any other series. I believe that because the NASCAR schedule is 38 races, or is it still? Do we still call it 38, or is it 36 races because of points races? So let's say it's 36 points, races 38 over the course of 38 races because there's an exhibition. It's 38 races over the course of essentially 44 weeks because there's only a couple weekends off, 40 weeks. So you have a ton of races on a very dense schedule, right? And a ton of different styles of race tracks, but not just race tracks, but styles of racing, right? So you have, there's multiple different ovals, but those produce different styles of racing. So a short track oval has a different style and technique of racing than an intermediate oval, and which also has a different style of racing than a super speedway oval. And there's kind of an equal amount of races on the NASCAR schedule each of those ovals. We also have, proper road courses like COTA, Indianapolis road course, Road America, but we have a Roval, which is this kind of like hybrid road course. We have a street course now, which is new this year. We have a dirt track. So NASCAR has this variety of racing styles and race tracks. The density of the schedule, which I'll touch on now, is like you have drivers who have to go from racing at COTA or racing at Atlanta in a super speedway. I'm trying to think of the schedule in real time here, but you're racing at Atlanta in a super speedway format, and then you essentially have 5 days to prepare for the COTA race, where you're going to COTA and you have to race on a road course format and a totally different style of racing, totally different car build, and then you're going from that and you're racing on a short track, Martinsville or wherever they raced after COTA. So you only have 5 days in between to prepare for each and every race. And then I think within the races too, there's just a lot more complexity in restarts and lane choice and choosing. The sheer volume of cars on the racetrack, our field sizes are double what most other racing series have, right? IndyCar and Formula One are around 20, 25 cars in their field. We have 36 to 40. It's not quite double, but so we have more cars. The way we interact with pit road is different. No pit speed limiters, more cars on pit road at a given time, more pit stops over a course of a race. So it's just like the course of a race, drivers are having to adjust and having to deal with way more complexities. The teams are dealing with way more complexities. The course of the season and the density of the season adds to that. It's just not physically okay. So that's the NASCAR. That's the one extreme I talked about. Extreme spectrums. The other end of the spectrum, I believe, is F1, right? Where F1 is highly specialized, right? So those drivers and teams have to be extremely specific to exactly what they're building and what they're optimizing their car for, and that is really, Parker, that side of the world better than I do. What would you call it? Road racing, right? Like or
Yep.
Road course racing is F1, right? Grand Prix
Yep.
racing. To the
Doesn't
point
matter
that
if it's a street course
they don't
or
even
natural terrain. It's a road course.
They do have street courses, and so there is some different racetrack textures, and maybe you could get super granular, and I'm sure an F1 engineer would rip me to shreds about how different all their racetrack textures and unique all the racetrack textures are. But from my perspective, I'm an F1. They're even really particular about their racetrack textures. They want their tracks to be smooth, right? They don't want their tracks to be abrasive. Mm-hmm. They, in fact, repaved COTA, which did not need to be repaved because F1 deemed it to be too rough, too bumpy for them, too much texture, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
If I'm wrong, just correct me. I don't know. So, that's my understanding of that. So it's like F1 is highly specialized, very specific to that form of racing. And then even within the race format is pretty straightforward, right? Traditionally, now this is kind of changing this year because we're seeing a little bit more cautions, right? We saw them throw us a full course or safety car, you call it an F1 caution at Baku for an incident that probably would have been a local yellow in the past, I think.
Mm-hmm. Or a virtual safety car.
But generally speaking, or a virtual safety car, generally speaking, F1 is going to go flag to flag. The pit strategy is straightforward. They don't take fuel. They often pit only once or twice in a race. I'm not trying to say it's not difficult. I'm not trying to say, it's not complex in its own right. I'm just saying that there's a lot of variables that NASCAR has to deal with that isn't a variable in F1, to where they're hyper focusing and maximizing, a way more specific discipline than in NASCAR. IndyCar fans got really, really offended by my tweet, and I think that my tweet was really and I can see this from just reading, the tweet. I think my tweet was obviously interpreted to be like NASCAR drivers are better than everybody else for this reason. They're more versatile and they're better drivers. NASCAR drivers are more versatile. They're better drivers than everybody else. It's not a debate. And oh, by the way, I'm a NASCAR driver, so I just opened myself up to a ton of criticism. So I understand that. And this is why it's difficult to have nuanced debate on social media, or maybe to start nuanced debate on social media. Like, this podcast is probably a better platform to start this conversation and then take it to social media, because you can sort of you can establish the conversation in the long form here, and then you can always point to it on social media. You can say, hey, we had this conversation about versatility. What do you think? You make a thread out of it. I just kind of like fire this off while I'm sitting on the couch watching the IndyCar race. And so it just got a bunch of people going. I was texting with Dale Jr. yesterday actually about it, and Dale was like, well, you did kind of ask for it. And I was like, I didn't ask for it, but I could see that. Like maybe the delivery wasn't, the delivery of the original tweet just brought in all of this conversation. But first of all, I hope that anybody that spends time, listening to me or reading the rest of my responses can see that not only on this topic, but most other topics. I mean, we were talked earlier in this podcast about, some pretty fun and interesting things, and I'll make some fun and interesting statements, but I'm pretty flexible guy when it comes to these things. Like I'm pretty nuanced, and I want to have a nuanced debate about versatility in a professional racing driver, what it means. And in the context of this conversation, I feel like a NASCAR driver is going through more diversity and has to make more adaptations than any other racing driver over the course of a race, over the course of the racing season, based on the current NASCAR structure. It hasn't always been that way, right? In the past 3 decades of NASCAR, through the 90s and the 2000s, we were paved oval racing specialists, right? We only raced 100%. On 2 road courses a year. And one of the road courses is first of all, both road courses, Sonoma and Watkins Glen, are world-class race courses. I love them, especially Watkins Glen. But Watkins Glen is a road course, but it's a fast, high-speed road course. It just plays right in. It's a perfect introduction road course for a stock car oval racer, right? Yep. Sonoma maybe a little bit more slower and technical, but those are the only 2 road courses we've had for decades up until the last decade. So this is a new thing, and so maybe here's another rebuttal to my own tweet. Right, this is what I'm willing to debate myself.
He's fighting with himself, folks.
I said NASCAR
Watch out.
Drivers are. Well, no, listen. Like, this is where my mind goes. I love it. This is why I love talking about this. Have these conversations. I can just sit and talk with myself about it, and I'm going to argue with myself. So so I said NASCAR drivers are the most versatile professional racing drivers in the world. Well, based on everything I'm saying, it's really the schedule in its current format. You could say the NASCAR schedule and format is going to produce the most versatile racing drivers, because there's a lot of NASCAR drivers in the field, and I don't really need to name them, but it's just like, but there's plenty of people in the thread, in my Twitter thread, that started naming drivers out that were like, well, what about this guy? What about this guy? He sucks on road courses, or this guy. And it's just like, well, those are drivers that, if they don't become versatile to these new disciplines like dirt racing and road racing and street courses, and even the new formats that NASCAR throws their way, double file, restarts, and choose cones, if they don't adapt to those things, then they're not versatile, and they're not going to make it, right? They're going to be replaced by the real drivers, by the real versatile drivers. And I think that it's this new direction that NASCAR is going with versatility will produce some really interesting strategies from teams too. This is kind of going into the conversation you and I had, Parker, on the phone earlier today, where it's like, now with the complexity of this schedule, it's not so one-dimensional. We're not paved oval racing specialists, right? There's pretty much an equal number of super speedway races, short track, oval, road races, a team can take a specialist strategy to try to leapfrog their organization into the playoffs, right, and have a shot at the championship. Now, granted, the playoffs themselves only has one road course in it, but for a lot of teams, half the battle is just getting there, right? So look at some of the challenger teams. Kaulig Racing, right, puts AJ Allmendinger in a Cup car this year. You have single car teams like JTG, right? You have Spire, you have Legacy, like you have these challenger teams that just getting into the playoffs is a huge thing for them. So they might over time start looking at ways to say, hey, instead of trying to be good at 26 races, right? Because there's 26 races leading into the playoffs. What if we focus on the 5 or 6 or 7 races that we have the best chance of winning at if we specialize in them, right? And that's where I think an IndyCar driver will probably disrupt the NASCAR field, or a F1 driver, Romain Grosjean, instead of going IndyCar racing, goes NASCAR racing. Because a NASCAR team gets bold and says, let's disrupt the NASCAR field and hire a specialist. Or they find a DTM driver or somebody from a specialized discipline of road racing, a Supercars driver. Oh, my God. Could you imagine? I mean, we've done this before with Marcus Ambrose, right?
Yeah, imagine
we've
Scott
seen
McLaughlin.
This happen.
Well, and Scott, your buddy. Yeah.
Scott McLaughlin would kill in NASCAR. Right, I think, especially because he's under the Penske umbrella, he would probably be in pretty good equipment right off the bat. I would imagine. I would love to find out if Scott McLaughlin and Roger Penske have talked about taking him full-time NASCAR racing anytime soon. Because with the direction NASCAR is going, you can take his specialty, which is road racing, but he's come from stock car road racing, right? He's come in. And actually, and this is where I'll just hurt a bunch of feelings again by saying this, Supercars drivers are highly specialized in stock car road racing, right? Like that is the most specialized, that is right there with F1 in terms of specialized, right? I guess they have street courses and terrain road courses, but they're highly specialized on road racing. So Scott, with his background, would probably come into NASCAR in a Penske car and win on a road course in his first year. It would not surprise me at all.
Yep.
Right.
You also
But anyway, so my point is, I think a team. What's that?
Well, you have Shane Van Gisbergen, who's been rumored to be a part of the Project 91 car. So he's probably the best Supercars driver right now since Scott McLaughlin left, and has competed with him, but has been a world-class talent over there. He's, as you put it, those guys for years, if guys went over there and tried to do Supercars when it was V8 Supercars and their old versions of cars, it was like watching an open-wheel driver try and come do NASCAR. It was incredibly tough. They were so specialized to that form of racing. Think about this. For a long time, a majority of the Supercars field, up until recently, and I still think it is actually this is the predominant form of braking, they right foot brake. Where in motorsports right now does anyone right foot brake? That's how specialized they were to the diffs of those cars, the way the transmissions worked. They were so good at that. And when Marcus Ambrose came over here, he brought that same braking and sort of thought process to a stock car, and that's why he was lights out the fastest guy on road courses. If he was in better cars, I don't think he ever would have lost one. In the speed department. So,
and now on the next gen platform, the equipment is way more equal. It would be incredible, and I think it's a strategy that teams need to look at, and are probably looking at it right now. Is how can we use this as a way to just forget about Richmond, Dover, Pocono, like Darlington. Whatever maybe those races are bad examples. Well, Darlington not necessarily. I think it's in the playoffs, but like Pocono, not a playoff race.
Dover.
Hang on, I gotta think about this for a second because those races get you.
Dover.
My point is, forget about all those races. Like, let's specialize in these races. We're gonna hire a Supercars driver. And so going back to my tweet and the drama around it, I do want to make a point here. Is I got a lot of responses of people that were like, and again, because the interpretation of my tweet was like, oh, NASCAR drivers are more versatile. Their schedule is more versatile, so therefore NASCAR drivers are better than everybody else. And that was not my point. In fact, that's the opposite, because I got a lot of responses that were like, well, what about this guy? And what about this guy? And this, Jimmy Johnson went to IndyCar and couldn't compete. And, this guy could come into NASCAR and would probably win. And that driver put XYZ in an F1 car and they wouldn't win. Or good luck trying to compete in a Supercars race. And I told a lot of people, if you look at my responses, I'm like, that's my point, because with this schedule and this format and the way that a NASCAR driver has to adapt week to week to a completely different discipline every single week, and they only have 5 days to prepare for it, and they have all these other complexities and pit stops and the race format and racing for stage points and when to race for stage points, when not to race for all these different things. You have so many things you have to focus on. We cannot specialize. We're generalists, right? So you have to be really good at just kind of like picking here and picking there within your race. And so no, you're not going to take a NASCAR driver and just put him in a Supercars race and be like, oh, see, he didn't win. What do you think, Landon? It's like, no, he's not a specialist in that category. We don't prepare for a road course the way that those guys prepare, because we simply don't have the time to. We don't have the resources, and we have to go to another race, right? And there's only one road course in the playoffs. So and that's spinning back around to the conversation here about a strategy that I think a team could make is you could game this system. You could shortcut some of this schedule by just specializing in one category, saying we're going to dominate road courses. Or Parker, yourself, and you and I talk about this, is like, I think you should focus on, and if I could do this again in the Xfinity series, I would love to do it, is like I would take an entire team, and not just the driver's specialty. I would love to take an entire team and say, we're going to focus this year on road courses and super speedways. Boom. That's it. And Phoenix, right? Because Phoenix is a championship race. Road courses, super speedways, and Phoenix. And I'm not just talking about like, so that means I think about it more and I go to bed thinking about it more and I'm in this work on the sim. I'm talking about top down at an organization. All of our wind tunnel testing goes towards super speedways and road courses. All of our K&C rig testing is focused on our road course cars and the chassis flexing on road courses. All of our 7 post time and all of our time on the pull down rigs and all of our preparation. We still have to go do those other races and the short tracks and the intermediates, but we're not going to put near the amount of resources and engineering behind those races, because the time that we spend in the simulator, the time that we spent working in simulation, the time that we spend in the wind tunnel, the time that we spend developing a new chassis and a new body and a new car is going to go towards a road course and a super speedway. And the reason I say that is because those are your best chances to win. Those are the two types of races where the driver can make the most difference, is a road course and a super speedway. The decision-making of a driver in a super speedway, the cars are way more equalized there because they're restricted. You're running wide open. The driver can make way more of a difference as long as he survives, because the wrecks are chaotic at the end. The driver can make way more of a difference there. And then obviously a road course, it's like in NASCAR, road courses is nobody's specialty yet. We're not super sophisticated at racing them. There's a ton of low-hanging fruit there for a driver to be like, I'm going to become a world-class road course racer. We saw it we see it in the Xfinity series with AJ Allmendinger. He's just unbeatable because the Xfinity series is a step below Cup, but AJ is probably one of the greatest stock car road racers to have ever walked the earth. And so it's just like, there's so much disparity there that he's unbeatable in Xfinity car and road courses. And I think that a team.
Well, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Let me finish this up.
Go ahead.
Yep. Any team, especially maybe a mid-range team, right? Like Jordan Anderson, who just invested a bunch in their super speedway program and won at Talladega, can say, hey, we could do this in the Xfinity series and get 3 or 4 wins before we get to the playoffs. Right? Or even just 1 or 2 wins before we get to the playoffs. Once we get in the playoffs, it does get a little trickier, right? Because you only have 1 super speedway and you have 1 road course in the playoffs. So you're going to have to hack your way through somehow. I mean, I guess that's part of the challenge. But if you said, hey, we're going to focus on speedways, road courses, and Phoenix, you could get to the playoffs using that model. And then once you're in the playoffs, you might even be able to use that speedway to propel you to the next round. You could use the road course to propel you again. You're just going to have to hack your way to the final round, and hopefully you've worked on Phoenix enough that you're fast there.
What I was going to say was, I think your tweet, although we've been at this for 10 minutes, I believe, right now, so I'm going to move on quick. Your tweet was misinterpreted as a judgment of talent and ability, and that wasn't the case. And this was the argument that Scott McLaughlin and I had on Twitter under your tweet, which was an interesting experience in itself. I'm a big Scott McLaughlin fan. Have been for a long time. I think the guy's an absolute badass to be able to come over here from Supercars and be not only competing IndyCar, but winning and be genuinely a championship contender this year. I think is unbelievable. His ability to get into ovals so quickly has been amazing. But as you pointed out, it's just math that tells you NASCAR drivers have to be the most versatile because we have the longest season, the most races, and it is every type of racetrack you can conceivably put a stock car on, we race on right now. So, and then to your point, it's condensed into a very short amount of time. That means we never get to focus 100% on one type of driving. And just to give you an example, in the last 4 weeks, I personally, you know this so well, in my preparation, have had to, on a Monday, start the sim for the next week after racing at Talladega, start doing the sim for Dover, which is two entirely different things. The week prior, I was doing Martinsville and then focusing on Talladega. And what fans don't understand is it's not just like getting your road car and driving in a circle, and that's going to be the difference. The cars are built entirely different, from the brakes to the steering boxes to the suspension setup to everything we touch inside those race cars is entirely different. The first time you drive a super speedway car, it will feel nothing like the car you drove at Dover or the car you drive at COTA, because they're entirely different. That's the craziest part I don't think people understand. And then add in that the driving that you actually have to do in that car is entirely different. And there's nowhere I know motorsports world very well, and I've driven open wheel race cars, and I've driven, I wanted to go to Formula One, and I've studied that world so intensely. They absolutely take, if you had to put a percentage of the driving style that they use, would be 90% is put across all of their racetracks, right? Maybe there's tracks that have a little difference in braking, or, because they have low downforce or high downforce, there's a 10% spread. In NASCAR, when I go to Martinsville, I use literally maybe 10% of what I use there in driving for Dover. Like, it's not even close. And when I go to COTA, what I've used at Dover shouldn't even be in the same, like, you wouldn't even put the two in the same realm driving wise. Not a single thing applies. Not one moment, shift, brake, use of the throttle, even suspension, nothing. So it's like that's where the misconception is, because and here's my last thing for the IndyCar guys. I'm a huge IndyCar fan. I love IndyCar and I love the Indy 500. But those cars, yes, they feel different on ovals and they feel different on road courses. I know that, and I know the suspension is different and the aero is different and that sort of thing. But I'm telling you, and I know they run different inserts. Some guys will run an oval insert and a road course insert, which is a little different, like us running different seats. There is nothing like the difference between changing steering boxes and transmissions and brakes like we do in stock cars. I guarantee you, as a driver, when you change all those feel points and you hop in for the first time and feel that thing, you're going to go, wait a second.
even if that's that subjective feeling that you have is the same with IndyCar, right? Like, if we had an IndyCar driver with us debate the other side right now, they could say, well, how do you know? Because I deal with different steering and setups, and it feels nothing, and they could say the same things that you just said, right? But the thing that drives my point about the NASCAR's edge is IndyCar races every 2 or 3 weeks, right? They have way more time to prepare and specialize for that next event, right? Where NASCAR is like, you're out of the one and into the next. I can, you talk about sim sessions. I can remember, last year in these sim sessions is like in the middle of a sim session, I'm running laps at New Hampshire, and then they literally stopped the sim and restart it, and I'm in Portland, right? Yeah. And it's like I have to switch within a sim session from this New Hampshire driving technique and driving style, and it's almost like, hang on, let me get out my notes first, and I need to think about Portland, because it's just so much more density and so many more changes. And we're just using one example, right? Like we didn't even go. I touched on it earlier. It's just like the in race, all the complexities of in race, and
so complex,
and pitting and lane choice and double file restarts, and the fact that we have so many restarts and we have more competitors. And here's another funny thing that I saw was like, somebody was like, well, IndyCar drivers or even open wheel, like, again, this isn't a debate against IndyCar. It became that way maybe because I have a lot of IndyCar followers and it's an American sport, I don't know. But open wheel racers, well, they're not allowed to touch each other, right? So those drivers have to, they have to be able to make moves on each other, and they can't pound into each other like you hillbilly NASCAR guys that just plow into each other. And I'm like, okay, that's a really good point. But does that actually help support or not support the idea of versatility? Because now you're saying a NASCAR driver has multiple ways to overtake a car, right? Where IndyCar, if you can't touch a car, right? So it took out a total variable in terms of how to overtake, right? Not trying to say overtaking in an IndyCar is easy. Never tried.
Well, hold on.
Can't imagine it's easy.
Well, it just to refute your point a little bit, I think like 3 of the passes for the lead this weekend all involved contact in some fashion or form. So we just got to be fair. We're being fair.
And contact is a lot higher risk in IndyCar. I guess contact is a lot higher. It's a lot higher risk, right? So I don't know. I just, when I saw this stuff about contact a couple times, I was thinking to myself, well, shoot, like we still have to choose, like we can contact each other. In fact, sometimes you have to contact each other and you have to make that decision, right? Like, do I contact the guy? How hard do I contact him? Is it going to hurt my car? Is it going to piss him off so much that he wrecks me back? Like, what's the, there's a lot of complexity in that. And maybe that's motor racing. That might be unfair, but I don't know. But yeah, the debate, it was fun on Twitter. I kept it as nuanced as I could. It's not a talent debate at all, and it's not even a debate about like what produces more talent, because I'm not trying to say that because of NASCAR's schedule and because of this versatility belief that I've proposed, right, that it means that NASCAR drivers are going to be the best drivers in the world, right? It might actually mean the opposite, because they have to be more generalist, right? So you could spend a whole career racing NASCAR. If we go another 20 years and the schedule remains like it is now, we might just be a bunch of good old boy jack of all trades that are good at kind of everything, but we don't specialize in anything, and no NASCAR driver can go to another discipline and really compete competitively because we didn't specialize in any of those things, right?
I think that's a great
I don't
point.
know if it's a feature or a bug. The other interesting point that I have made since the conversation that I've thought was, does this even matter? Right? Like NASCAR, obviously NASCAR thinks it matters, right? Because they've made intentional moves to say, hey, we're taking away some of these intermediate tracks, we're replacing them with road courses, we're taking away some of the short tracks, we're replacing them with a dirt track. Like, NASCAR obviously has a strategy here to appeal to a broader audience or to new fans with these different racing formats, and the drivers are going to have to be more versatile as a result. But does it matter if the drivers are versatile? Does the market actually value that? Are more people going to watch NASCAR because we race on different types of racetracks? Or do people want to see specialists, right? Do they want to see NASCAR drivers that are really good at oval, like just insanely good at oval, right? And super speedway racing and short track racing. Is the market even going to value this over time? I don't know. So that's where, some of that. And yeah. I'll take full responsibility on the on the opening tweet of just people like Well, I don't know. I'm not going to take responsibility for people that didn't read the thread and didn't read my responses and see, hey, you know what? This is kind of a nuanced conversation, and I was inviting nuanced conversation and nuanced debate. And I hate that Scott McLaughlin kind of like stopped right there and called me ignorant because it's like, well, I don't think I'm ignorant. I think I'm pretty open-minded.
I can't wait till you guys meet. He's a good dude. So.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that in person. Maybe. Hey,
not.
Wait a second. This is a podcast. Eventually, we will invite a guest at some point. Maybe Scott will be one of our first guests. So we can have the same debate.
There we go. That'd be awesome.
And everyone can hear.
But I don't know. Let's continue the debate if you listen to this.
Yes.
But I don't know. We need to go back the Money Lap team internally. Maybe I need to think about how we present these debates. Maybe starting them on the podcast and then taking them to social media is a better route. I don't know.
That would be maybe the better strategy. Just let us know what you think. Use hashtag MoneyLap or reach at the MoneyLap on Instagram. But I think that was well put. And the last thing I'll say about all this is, to your point of being a feature or a bug, it's something that is unique to this form of racing right now. And we have not seen many of the teams adjust to this, but as you point out, Kaulig Racing really has been the most visible and striking example of really trying to be a specialist with the hiring of AJ Allmendinger to be a part of their Cup program. Right now, he sits 27th in points. If he goes and wins a road course that gets them into the playoffs, that will be worth, just in the first year prize money, if he finishes 16th in the playoffs that year, so dead last, they don't advance any further, he will have netted that team $1.1 million roughly more in prize money. So when we're talking about the specialist versus generalist thing and why a team might do that, that's a perfect example. They're sitting 27th in points, but to move 11 spots would make about $1.1 million more. Pretty cool.
And I think that you could already say that JTG has benefited from their specialist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that Ricky Stenhouse is necessarily, I don't think he is consciously hired because he's a super speedway specialist, because Ricky's pretty good at a lot of tracks, but I think it's really well known that he is extremely good at super speedways, and I think that is a skill that will carry him through to race NASCAR for as long as he wants to, because any team that hires him knows he's going to contend on a super speedway.
Yep, it's a chance.
And
speaking of
they
generalists,
reap the same benefits, right? I think that they were. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. Speaking of generalists, moving on. Just a generalist out there who's doing big things in small, small teams. Corey Lajoie having a career year in the NASCAR Cup Series. Spire Motorsports having a career season as well with this 7-car. I was having this discussion with someone earlier today who knows Corey's family and said, hey, man, he's doing a great job. And I said, he really is. And what I'm most impressed with Corey is that for people that don't understand, and they'll learn that this podcast is about all motorsports and we like to connect them all, I believe that what Corey has done over the last 5 years, in my opinion, is the hardest thing you can do in professional motorsports. And that is to be at the back end of the Cup Series, hanging on for dear life, going through shady owners, shady teams, bad equipment, no hope, no light at the end of the tunnel. To add in environments that are absolutely not built to help you improve, nor do they want to improve. They're surviving, right? Often and many times. To race at that capacity and in that culture is a really tough thing. To then take that and make it better and build on it and actually improve performance is almost unheard of. What he has done, whether he ever goes on to a bigger ride and gets to go win races or wins a race in that 7-car, to me, add in, he hasn't been driving Xfinity cars and trucks and going and winning races down there, which usually for like myself would almost be a necessity because I need that motivation. I need to taste winning. I need to feel it because otherwise I get down. What he has done to me has been one of the more impressive things I've seen. And so I think for a lot of fans out there, like, oh, this is cool. Like, this guy, just an underdog, deserves a shot. I'm like, no. What he's already done is incredible. Whatever happens from here, I know he wants more and wants to be there forever and to be a part of a winning team is, absolutely that's the goal. But what has already been accomplished, to have the start of the season they've had in that 7 car and to know that he has improved and he's built, helped them build this up, I just think it's an incredible thing. And I say all this speaking to a guy in yourself, Landon, who has done this. You went from the highest pressure situation I believe there is in the NASCAR Cup Series in the mid-2000s to be starting parking and having to qualify cars on time, to getting in smaller organizations and building them up and having great runs, to getting a shot in a more stable situation and sort of climbing that ladder. All the while, you're back, for periods of those time, you're in 30th, 35th, and you're having to find tiny little victories, and there's not a lot of people that care that you're there, right? And so It's just a really tough thing mentally to do and to do for a long period of time. And when we talk about grinders in golf, the grinders of motorsports are a Corey or like yourself years ago doing that sort of thing and, eventually being successful at it. So it's just, to me, unbelievable. And shout out to him for another great run in the top 15 this weekend as he, continues grinding.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. I think some important notes on that is kind of what he's up against even internally. And I'm not specifically saying Aspire, but I'm just saying, I feel like maybe we're all feeling the same thing. And I think we're seeing some light peeking through, and that something's going to happen with Corey soon. I don't know anything. I'm not trying to I feel like something's going to happen with him. I texted with him this morning, and I was just like, man, you're doing so awesome. Like, I feel like you're going to get a shot soon. I don't know anything. I just think you're going to get a shot soon. And it's in the most Corey way possible. He when he texted that, or when he responded to that part, he said, well, more people with slacks on talk to me at the racetrack now, so that must be a good sign. Meaning I think there's more administrative people responding, seeing him at the racetrack. But the thing is, like, what he's up against is, like, when you drive for those teams, you're grinding like he's had to grind and like I've grinded. You get these top 15s here and there, and a lot of times it's a pat on the back, right? And sometimes it's even horrible because, like, the broadcast is just like they broadcast the race and it's like, oh, and a good run from Corey, he ran 12th today. And it's like, that's all you get. You get some scraps, and I feel like it's finally shining through where people are taking notice. People are talking about it regularly because at the end of the day, the reason what he's doing, what I've had to do, what all these drivers that are grinding, the reason it is so hard is because even team owners in this sport who've been in this sport for decades and know the sport really well and should know how hard it is to do what he's doing, at the end of the day, those team owners value people with wins, right? And time again, I came up second place in a driver decision by a big team, and they went with a guy that had a win, right? Or they went with the guy that had multiple wins. And Corey, I know, has gotten passed up on deals because it's like, we went with the guy that's got he's got a trophy case, right? And he won races a couple years ago, or he won that one race last year. And they, and it's just like in that single moment, these decision makers just completely ignore the actual body of work that's being built by someone like Corey. And the fact that, he probably can win if he was just given the opportunity. Now, as normal, because it's been a topic of the day, I'm going to argue with myself and contradict myself. I will say there's one thing.
I think that's my job.
There's one thing that could hold, that could be a challenge, or is a challenge for Corey in that, and that is the winning is valuable and it is important, and you have to know how to win, right? And Corey hasn't. I shouldn't say this because he won that big modified race last year at Martinsville. Like, he still knows how to win, right? He's had some wins. Not big NASCAR wins, but that's a pretty big win. That's like winning a NASCAR race. So I think it's important for Corey to still be able to know how to win because when he does get that opportunity, he needs to win, right? Like, I got in that opportunity at Kaulig Racing last year, and I didn't get a win. I was so close a couple times. I don't know, what the difference makers could have been, but it was like I needed that one more year in the equipment and to have a little more consistency with the equipment to like maybe get that first win. So that is the one thing that, like, when these team owners revert back to past winners, at the end of the day, that they look at the whole body of work and Corey, and then they devalue it by being like, well, this guy knows how to win. And there's some value, there's some merit to that. But Corey, I mean, actually, a good comparison would be Matt DiBenedetto, right? Like, he's a guy that grinded and grinded and grinded for so long, and he did get his shot. But when he did get his shot, he ran well but couldn't win, right? Yep. Like, he couldn't close it out. And that is an example. Nothing against Matt, but it's just like that is an example on why those team owners will choose Eric Jones over Corey Lajoie, right? When the two are available at the same time, right? Or they'll choose, someone that's like, is he plateauing? Maybe, but he's got to win, so we're gonna go with this guy. Mm-hmm. That's why. But I got a lot of faith in Corey. I think he'll win when he gets the shot, and I think he's gonna get the shot too. If nothing else, because he confirmed to me that more people with slacks are talking to him at the track.
And we shouldn't just knock down Spire. They've been very publicly open about the fact that they wouldn't hold him back, right? Like, if he gets an opportunity at a championship caliber race team or race, a car that's competed at the front and been part of the playoffs, they're going to say, by all means, go ahead. Like, this was the job we all set out to do together. You got it. Go get it done. So that's a pretty cool situation for him to be in. Yeah. I do believe he'll get the shot. I do know there's multiple rumors out there about the cars that he's in discussion for, but it's just cool, to see a guy who has grinded to get the success and to get the recognition. Before we end today, because we only have one more thing left, speaking of all the mix of motorsports we have in all this, the F1 NASCAR crossover of the year so far occurred kind of out of nowhere, with RFK, so Roush, Fenway, Keselowski, and Alpine F1 Team getting to have a day at the Charlotte Roval where the Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon drove the next-gen car on the Roval, and then Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski got to drive a Ford GT against them. I have no info as to who was faster in which car, but we did get our F1 NASCAR crossover of the year so far, and we're all pretty happy about it. It looked like Esteban and Pierre had a great time, so whatever. Pretty cool.
Sweet. Well, you probably read about that in the Thursday Money Lap newsletter.
Exactly.
So, check it out.
And before we go, I just have to say, Apple Notes, please add a sync function between the phone and the Mac. That would be great. We'd be super happy about that. Kansas this weekend, plus the Miami GP. You and I discussed it. We're not going to Miami, though. We're not, it seems like.
No. We don't have tickets. We weren't invited. We're not cool enough to go to Miami. The race isn't sold out, though. I haven't seen where the race is sold out, so...
It's not. They expect it to be,
scrounge up
but yeah, it sounds like they didn't get it done. So we'll see. I think that's it for Money Lap.
Let's make this a wrap.
Start.
I'm tired of talking. I'm tired of talking. This was fun. Thank you so much. Peace.